And it's no longer, it's not a question of just black families.
Oh,
It is also white families.
No, 40% of everybody.
Right.
The species has no experience of this. It's something really structural. Families don't perform the economic roles they used to do. Someone occasionally will ask me, well, weren't there single parents in say, the 16th century in London? And the answer was, yes, they were, and they died. You couldn't keep, you can't nurture a child and you live yourself unless you have a family. But people like Reverend Jesse Jackson are beginning to raise the moral issue. It's going to be a moral issue. Sorry about that. I know we don't like those kind of issues, but that's what John Wellesley said.
The moral issue is?
That you have a responsibility to children which you're not carrying out if that's the way you raise them.
Okay, folks, here we are on part 3 of the Moynihan Report, and we're going to get deeper into the Negro family, where he's going to give up a little bit more game. In fact, we're going to start off right off the bat of what the heart of the discussion is, where we left off from part 2. So the Negro American family, chapter 2. At the heart of the deterioration of the fabric of Negro society is the deterioration of the Negro family. Amen to that. Especially in the American society or any society. It is the fundamental source of weakness of the Negro community at the present time. There is probably no single fact of Negro American life so little understood by whites, which is very true, and still it is today. They don't understand our family structure. The Negro situation is commonly perceived by whites in terms of the visible manifestations of discrimination and poverty. I think that's even black folks themselves see it the same way. It's too simplistic, in part because the Negro protest is directed against such obstacles, and in part, no doubt, because these facts which involve actions and attitudes of the white community as well. It is more difficult, however, for whites to perceive the effect that 3 centuries of exploitation have had on the fabric of the Negro society itself. Even I didn't know this. It took me a long time to come to this fact. I wish I had understood the Moynihan Report back 30 years ago. But I didn't, because the Moynihan Report was always disparaged. But he is on point. The problem with the black family, problem with the black community is this. And it's hasn't been well explained or understood. Here, the consequences of the historic injustices done to Negro Americans are silent and hidden from view. But here is where the true injury has occurred. Unless this damage is repaired, this is the key for the Moynihan Report, all effort to end discrimination and poverty and injustice will come too little. In other words, if you build a house or you build a platform on a faulty base or a faulty foundation, it's not going to do any good. The house is going to come down. It's not going to do much good. And that's what he was trying to tell Johnson, and that's what he was trying to tell the Congress. This is what you have to do. You got to build a firm foundation, which is repair the family first. The role of the family in shaping character and ability is so pervasive as to be easily overlooked. The family is the basic social unit of American life. It is the basic socializing unit. By and large, adult conduct in society is learned as a child. A fundamental insight of psychoanalytic theory, for example, is that the child learns a way of looking at life in his early years through which all later experience is viewed. Let me highlight this, because this is key. This is key, especially for all the women that think that think that being a single mother and doing it yourself and not involving the father is productive, and they wonder what happens to the kid when the kid grows up. It profoundly shapes adult conduct. It's just something even black people don't really they fail to admit. It may be hazarded that the reason family structure does not loom large in public discussion of social issues is that people tend to assume that the nature of family life is about the same throughout American society, and it is not. The mass media and the development of suburbia have created an image of American family as a highly standardized phenomenon. It is therefore easy to assume that whatever it is that makes differences among individuals or group of individuals is not a different family structure, which is very true. We've said that forever. There is much truth to this. As with any other nation, Americans are producing a recognizable family system, but that process is not completed by any means. There are still, for example, important differences in family patterns surviving from the age of the great European migration to the United States. In other words, the European family structure that white people have back then and still today is culturally carried from where they were. This is key. This is key. I can't stress this enough. Let me bring the highlight. Let me bring the pain, the highlight. There's probably another video I should include with this, but let me bring the highlight. Now, and these variations account for notable differences in the progress and assimilation of various ethnic and religious groups. And he's bringing it. He's giving you keys here. He is giving you keys. I can't even highlight all the keys that he's giving you. A number of immigrant groups were characterized by unusually strong family bonds. These groups have characteristically progressed more rapidly than others because they brought it with them. So you worry about the Chinese and all the immigrants coming in and wonder how come they can progress this fast, because their culture was not destroyed. They brought it with them. They bring it with them. They don't have the pathology that black people have. They bring it with them. And you have to change the culture. Black women don't understand this. Black men don't understand this. You can't, money will not do it. You have to change the structure. But there is one truly great discontinuity in family structure in the United States at the present time. That between the white world in general and that of the Negro American, two opposite structures. The white family structure is based on the nuclear family. The black family structure, even in the South, is it's a clan. It's the clan. It's still the old extended structure, extended family structure. It's a clan, and you're trying to teach black Americans how to be a nuclear family. And the thing is, you can't do it. They have to be trained that way. And you have to give the father the ability to raise the family that way. The white family has achieved a high degree of stability in maintaining that stability. By contrast, the family structure of lower class Negroes is highly unstable and in many urban centers approaching complete breakdown. Well, we know how that went. We can see the results of that. We can see how that turned out, because the more you can see as more urban as the United States became more urban, you can see the breakdown. There is considerable evidence that the Negro community is in fact dividing between a stable middle class group that is steadily going stronger and more successful, and increasingly disorganized, and disadvantaged lower class group. In other words, there's that class structure. In fact, the women were talking about the class structure. The educated women were talking about the class structure that exists. There are indications, for example, that the middle-class Negro family puts a higher premium on family stability and the conserving of the family resources. This is where the myth of black male patriarchy, because of this group, albeit it was a small group back then. It's a little bit better now, but it's a small group. And they put a more premium on family than the white family did. Okay. The discussion of this paper is not obviously directed at the first group, excepting as it is affected by the experiences of the second. And an important exception, the tangle of pathology. You talk about how the middle class black folks cannot escape the pathology that's going on with the lower class of the urban black folks. And we'll get into that, because I think I touched on it in another video, but we're going to get deeper into that later on. There are 2 points to be noted in this context. First, the emergence and increasing visibility of Negro middle class may beguile the nation into supposing that the circumstances of the remainder of the Negro community are equally prosperous, whereas just the opposite is true and is likely to continue so. You know, that is the magic Negro theory, or the one only theory that people talk about. Second, the lumping of all Negroes together in one statistical measurement very probably conceals the extent of the disorganization among the lower class group. If conditions are improving for one and deteriorating for the other, the resultant statistical average might show no change. Further, the statistics on the Negro family and most other subjects treated in this paper refer to only a specific point in time. They are a vertical measure of the situation at a given moment. They do not measure the experience of the individual over time. Thus, the average monthly unemployment rate for Negro males for 1964 is recorded at 9%. But during 1964, some 29% of Negro males were unemployed at one time or another. Similarly, for example, if 36% of Negro children are living in broken homes at any specific moment, it is likely that a far higher proportion of Negro children find themselves in that situation at one time or another in their lives. Nearly a quarter of urban Negro marriages are dissolved. So nearly a quarter of Negro women living in cities who have ever been married or divorced, separated, or living apart from their husbands. Nowadays, we know it's because it's an urban problem. And he gives you a chart of ever married females with husband absent or divorced in rural versus urban in 1960. You don't even have to think about it. You can see how the being how it being as the closer you get to the farm, the more stable the marriages are. Where because on the farm you need the wife and the father and the kids all together. And divorce back then was non-existent because men and women needed each other. The rates are highest in the urban north and northeast, where 26% of the Negro women ever married are either divorced, separated, or have their husbands absent. On the urban frontier, the proportion of husband absent is even higher. Like in New York. In New York City in 1960, it was 30%. Not including divorces. That is 30% absent fathers and not including divorces. Wow. That is spectacular. And this is in 1960. Among ever married non-white women in the nation, the population with husbands present declined in every age group over the decade 1950 to 1960. In other words, they brought in more money. It helped. They give a chart. Although similar declines occurred among white females, the proportion of white husbands present never dropped below 90%, except for the first and last group. Nearly 1/4 of Negro births are now illegitimate. Both white and Negro illegitimacy rates have been increasing, although from a dramatically different basis. The white rate was 2% in 1940 and is now 3% in 1963. In that period, the Negro rate went from 16.8% to 23.6%. Well, because 1935 you had AFDC, and you had the Matrimony Causes Act, which allowed divorce. And basically, AFDC on a federal level sanctioned what we call illegitimate children. The number of illegitimate children per 1,000 live births increased by 11 among whites in the period 1940 to 1963, but by 68, 6 times higher, among non-whites. There are, of course, limits to the dependability of these statistics. There are almost certainly a considerable number of Negro children who, although technically illegitimate, are in fact offspring of stable unions, which is very true. On the other hand, it may be assumed that many births that are in fact illegitimate are recorded otherwise. Yeah, there's a lot of that where you get married, that shotgun marriage, you get married where you're pregnant just so that they can mark down legitimate on the birth certificates. Because prior to 1937, I do believe you could, if you had a child out of wedlock, you couldn't get any help for that kid. Probably the two opposite effects cancel each other out. It's going to give you a chart of ever married Negro females with husbands absent or divorced in urban areas by region. We already know this is an urban problem, and it's pretty much in the same, even though it's higher in places like New York and Boston and Philly, and it goes down. Or the South, which is closer to the rural base, is lower, probably the lowest. Now the chart talking about non-white illegitimacy was 16 times higher than what he was talking about earlier, or 8 times higher. On the urban front, non-white illegitimacy rates are usually higher than the national average. And the increase of late has been drastic. The District of Columbia, the illegitimacy rate for non-whites grew from 21.8% in 1950 to 29.9% 0.5%. In other words, the bigger the city gets, the bigger the illegitimacy rate gets. And this is back in 1964. It was already out of whack. A similar picture of disintegrating Negro marriages emerges from the divorce statistics. Divorces have increased of late for both whites and non-whites, but at a much greater rate for the latter. In 1940, both groups had a divorce rate of 2.2%. Look at that. Both groups had a divorce rate of 2.2% in 1940, even though we're poor. So we know that it is not money. It is not money, because the Depression, nobody had any money. You would expect a bigger divorce rate. By 1964, the white rate had risen to 3.6, but the non-white rate had achieved 5.1%, a 40% greater than formerly equal to white. Almost 1/4 of Negro families are headed by females. This is back then. As a direct result of this high rate of divorce, separation, and desertion, a very large percent of Negro families are headed by females, while the percentage of such families among whites has been dropping. Since 1940, it has been rising amongst Negroes. That's the Moynihan scissors that was talked about, where money what they assume money didn't help the problem. Hiring men didn't help the problem. The percent of non-white families headed by a female is more than double the percent for whites. Fatherless non-white families increased by a sixth between 1950 and 1960, even though the economy got better, but held constant for white families. It has been estimated that only a minority of Negro children reach the age of 18, having lived with all their lives with both parents. That kills the idea of the middle class. There is still something structurally wrong with the Negro family, even in what we call upper middle class black people. Only a mind. Look at this. Let's go ahead and let's go ahead and go highlight it. It has been estimated that only a minority of Negro children who reach the age of 18 having lived with all their lives with both parents. In other words, even the best parents had a degree of separation, just not as severe with parents with money. And here we go in the illegitimacy ratios by per non-white births by city. Look at Memphis, man. Memphis was always a toilet, man, as far as that's concerned. Memphis and Chicago, and look at Memphis. Memphis is even back then is so bad. I don't see Los Angeles in this, but this is back in the 60s. So you can see how bad this is even back then. Almost 1/4 of non-white families are headed by a woman. It shows the chart. Children on AFDC with fathers absent, compared with all children on AFDC. You can see almost half, of the kids on AFDC have a father absent. Once again, the measure of family disorganization is found to be diminishing amongst white families and increasing amongst Negro families. In other words, the policy, that's why he wrote the Moynihan Report, the policies that they had enacted, the anti-poverty policies they enacted helped the white family, but it made the black families increase in that particular type of dysfunction. The breakdown of the Negro family has led to a startling increase in welfare dependency. The majority of Negro children receive public assistance under the AFDC program at one point or another in their childhood. At present, 14% of Negro children are receiving AFDC assistance, as against 2% of white children. 8% of white children receive such assistance at some time. Against 56, look at this, at 56 of non-whites, according to the extrapolation based on the Hugh data. Let it be noted that, however, that out of a total of 1.8 million non-white illegitimate children, in addition, in the nation in 1961, 1.3 million were not receiving aid under AFDC. Yeah, well, a lot of programs, although a substantial number have or will receive aid at some time in their lives, because a lot of states, if you were illegitimate, you couldn't get AFDC back then. Again, the situation may be said to be worsening. The AFDC program, deriving from a long-established Mother's Aid program, was established in 1935 principally to care for widows and orphans. Although the legislation covered all children in homes deprived of parental support because of one or both of their parents are absent or incapacitated. That's why a lot of black women were listed as married, because it was most states didn't cover illegitimate children until 1972 or 73. In the beginning, the number of AFDC families in which the father was absent because of desertion was less than a third of the total. Today, it's 2/3. It's 2/3. And a lot of that is because women report what? Desertion, to get their benefits. Hugh estimates that between 2/3 and 3/4 of the 50% increase from 1948 to 1955 in the number of absent father families receiving ADC may be explained by the increase in broken homes in the population. That's called divorce, y'all. Cases opened under AFDC compared with unemployment for males, for non-white males. You can see that, and this is what they call the Moynihan scissors. You can see the unemployment. Before that, the number of AFDC cases tracked the unemployment rate, right? But until, 1960s, when it stopped, when all of a sudden you got the scissors where the unemployment rate went down and the number of AFDC cases kept going up, and this is a trend that has continued. A 1960 study of aid to dependent children in Cook County, Illinois, stated that the typical ADC mother in Cook County was married and had children. See, that's what you had to have. By her husband who deserted. This is so she can get benefits. His whereabouts are unknown, and he does not contribute to the support of his children. She is not free to marry and has an illegitimate child since her husband left. We're not going to even talk about that. This is what we call the walking divorce that black males and females used to do. You just walk out because you had no money to get a proper divorce. You just walk away, and nobody said nothing. And she went on with her life. She went and got her another man. The steady expansion of this welfare program, as of public assistance programs in general, can be taken as a measure of the steady disintegration of the Negro family structure over the past generation in the United States. He couldn't have said it better. Couldn't have said it better. So we're running a little long. This is part 3. In the next part, we're going to get into the roots of the problem. We're going to get really, really deep because he's just getting started. He's just getting started. And he's going to go really, really deep. But close this one out. Until next time, this is BGS out.